Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's Friday. Thank the Lord. It's a good day when it's Friday because you get a couple days to wind down a little bit, relax, whatnot. And so, nevertheless, it's a blessing. I don't know. I was kind of confused what I wanted to talk about today because I was like trying to find a topic, but just nothing kind of just popped in my head. And then as I was reading reading the news, which I don't do often, but every once in a while I'll pull it up just to kind of keep up to speed on what's going on. I saw an article in the news about in New York. I think, what did they say, that all new homes no longer will have gas. They're basically trying to get rid of gas stoves, those type of things. And I get why they're doing that, but I don't know. I understand both sides of the argument. I understand that, you're trying to get away from fossil fuels. I get it. But at the same time, it seems to me that we are trying to just literally just go off a cliff with it, in that, you want to just totally just stop it right from the get-go. No, there's no gradual acceptance of solar or wind or whatever. It's literally like, no, we're going to tell you to get rid of what you got, and you're going to, there's no gradual, because most people still don't have electric cars. I think it's a wonderful technology, but it's not feasible. And I might have mentioned this in an earlier blog or podcast, but it's nothing that one, it's still expensive to buy. Electric cars are much more expensive, and there's no infrastructure in the majority of states for you to use it in a way that you would use a gasoline powered vehicle. Nor does it have the range. Some of them are getting close, but still don't have the range. So when I was on the West Coast, about last month, was it last month? Or the month before last? It's big in the West Coast. Electric power stations are everywhere. Obviously, because the West Coast was at the forefront of it, and they're making more of an effort to put it, make it more accessible and have more of them. That's the West Coast. And of course, there are cities spread about that have electric stations too, but not in the same way regionally as the West Coast that I'm aware of. I can't speak about the Northeast. I haven't been up north in a while, but it's one of those things where it's not enough infrastructure. So you see electric cars around here, and they're becoming a little bit more common, but for the most part, you don't have any charging stations except for at Walmart's. We used to have a Whole Foods that had charging stations, but that's gone. And I don't know if the other Whole Foods has charging stations or not, but really the only charging stations you have are at Walmart's. So it's like, why? You want people to go electric, but there's nowhere really to plug it up except at home. Of course, when you buy an electric car, of course, you have to buy a charger as part of it. So, I don't know. I'm kind of betwixt and between, because I was never necessarily all into the media's version of climate change, because they have an agenda. The media's version of climate change, they have an agenda. Is climate change happening? Oh, I'm sure it is. I'm not a scientist, I don't know, but I'm sure it is. Does the Earth go through regular climate cycles? Yes, it does, and that's been proven as well. Are we, as humans, messing stuff up? I'm sure we are. What in the world? I'm sure we are. Sorry, a motorcycle just screaming past, just not even caring about traffic. I'm sure that we are. With all the chemicals we use, I'm sure we're affecting the environment. All the garbage we dump. A lot of people start recycling. Look, the town I lived in stopped recycling. So that tells you. So yeah, we're definitely to blame for a lot of the things that are going on in the world. We've definitely not been friendly to the environment. Let's just put it that way. The Industrial Revolution was probably the worst thing that could have happened environmentally. The best thing that happens is civilization, but the worst thing to happen environmentally. So there's just a lot of angles to this. There's a lot of angles to the environment. There's a lot of angles to climate change. There's a lot of angles to things that deal with our world naturally. So I think that with the New York thing law, I think it's going to go into effect. It's obvious that their intentions probably aren't the best of intentions. They're just trying to force people to do things that they don't want to do. And that's typical government media. They want to force everybody to think that the way they want to think, and that's just not right. Now, in the long term, is it probably positive? Probably so. But I'm gonna tell you what, gas is is good to have, especially when all the electricity goes out, because then at least you have something you can warm up next to, and you can still cook. So in reality, gas is a great thing to have. Now, I don't have gas. I'm all electric. I'm all electric, so I don't have that. But my mother-in-law does. She has gas. And so obviously when the power goes out, she can still, heat the home and cook if she has to. But, I'm all for renewable energy. I'm all for, solar and wind and all those things. I'm all for it. Are there drawbacks to everything? Of course there are. Solar farms take up a lot of land. The batteries aren't necessarily environmentally friendly at all. Wind is obviously dependent on wind, so when there's no wind wind generation, hence there's no power. So that's limiting. Solar, of course, if there's no sun, you're not going to get a whole lot of power through solar because there's no sun. Because the little solar panel I have to run a few things at my house doesn't run when there's no sun, when it's cloudy. It's really not charging anything. So everything is limited. But is it a better alternative? Of course it is. Of course it is. But I just don't know. I don't know. I don't know how, how to really look at it, from just one side or the other. I kind of try to look at everything objectively, and I see both sides of the argument, and so people on one end are afraid to get rid of what we've had for a century plus, because the other stuff isn't readily available. It's not inexpensive. It's very expensive. Solar power is expensive. The panels aren't what's expensive. It's the batteries and hooking up to the electric is what's expensive. Conversion. That's expensive. It's very expensive. And in this state, they penalize you for going to solar. So there's no incentive to be on solar because they penalize you for it. If you've already got electric. So I guess if you're going to build a home from scratch where there's no power lines, you're good. Go solar, by all means. But if you're already on the grid, in this state, they're going to penalize you. Now, back on the West Coast, they don't. In fact, in Arizona, it's mandated that new homes have solar panels, which I think is great because it's just so much sun all the time. So, you're getting great generation because it's sun majority of the time because it's desert. Perfect. That's perfect. Whereas, like, if you're on the coasts, then that's where you see a coast or areas in the Midwest that whatever, you see a lot of wind farms, and those are great, but the turbines are extremely large, extremely huge. They take up a whole lot of land. They're dangerous to birds, obviously. So everything has drawbacks. Everything has drawbacks. So there is no perfect solution. Even if we had the technology to go fusion, that would be better than gas and really nuclear. Because very few nuclear power plants, but supposedly there might be more coming. But it's just one of those things where we have to gradually move on to what we hope is better energy generation, or at the very least more environmentally friendly energy generation, where we're not digging up the ground and making big old holes and everything else and just sucking our planet dry, when we could use the environment to produce our energy without having to dig it up. Everything is money driven in this world, so obviously somebody's not going to do it unless they can make a profit off it. But honestly, we need to get to a point where we can be like Star Trek, and there's no more money. There's no such thing as money anymore. Everything is provided for. Energy, place to live, food is produced by what they call replicators. So you're not using, you're not killing animals to produce food, which I have no problem with. That's how you get food. But that's a great place to be in when you don't have to worry about money. Society is not driven by money anymore. Everything just runs the way it runs, and I think that's great. Nothing, you don't have to pay for anything. Everything's provided for. Okay, so now I hear it. Oh, well, that's socialism. No, the socialism part of it is the government, not necessarily the society. So in a Star Trek type of world, it's not a socialist environment. The rich aren't given to the poor, and all that. Everybody has the same thing, which I guess you could say socialism aspires to be that, but it's our current form of it is not that. Because what's happening in socialism is that they try to make everybody equal, but in reality, it's not a what I would call a volunteer thing. It's the government's taken from the people who have and giving it to the people who have not. But when in reality, they're not really giving it to the have-nots. The government's keeping everything, and all the people are suffering. So I guess for and the more I watch YouTube videos and these people who are RVing or building homes, and they got these huge solar panels, and I'd love to have one in my house, a couple of them actually, but again, we get penalized for it here, so it does us no good to do it if we're going to get penalized for it, or for having it. Might as well just stay on the grid. But for the folk who aren't on the grid, that's perfect. The solar is perfect, and it's worth the expense that you pay for it. Not necessarily for the panels, but for the batteries. That's what you're really paying for to do that, because it's essentially free energy. Some of these RVers, they got solar panels, so most everything runs off the panels. YouTuber I follow, their boat, solar. Everything, the solar, it runs off of solar, and then it runs off of the propellers. So the propellers produce energy. So when the propellers move, it charges up the battery, to produce energy. So they kind of have a double whammy on that. So I guess we would call it kinetic energy. Whereas something is moving, and not only is it used for propulsion, but it's used to produce energy, to store in batteries so you can use it later on, especially when the weather is not good enough for solar to produce the energy, which I think is great. So you could invent a vehicle that produces energy through kinetics. So every time that the wheel moves, you're producing energy. That might be a viable thing down the road. Similar to that boat where the propeller moves, and while it's moving and propelling the boat, it's producing energy that's being stored. So that's an idea. You would probably still need you probably would still need a battery to start, depending on where your energy level is. But once you're started and once you go, especially on long trips, you're good, because you're not only moving, but you're storing energy. So there's a lot of things we could do for the environment, but we're definitely not taking care of it. And as saints and Christians, we should be much more environmentally conscious about the planet we live on. And I know, and this is another thing, I know, well, we're only travelers passing through. Well, we got to take care of the world while we're living on it. It does no good. It does no good to destroy the world that you're living on. It really doesn't. So, as saints and Christians, we have a responsibility to not only make our world better, not just through conversion, but through leadership and taking care of the environment and spreading the word of God and all these things. But the environment is part of it. I think the Pope was correct in that. Now, at least partially, where he said, we as Christians have what's the word he used? I'm probably gonna have to paraphrase, but he said we have an obligation to take care of the environment. That God created this world, and we have an obligation to keep it as pristine as possible. As pristine as possible. So, I think he has a point there. And I don't agree with the Pope on a lot of things, but sometimes he does make a good point. And so, we have to look at that. We have to look at what we do as individuals. Truly, as individuals, we have to be mindful of what we do. We have to be mindful of what we do. Okay? And so I think the environment is most definitely important. Are human beings helping the environment? No, we're not. Let's just be honest, we're not. And I think our government is not looking at it from both sides. And it depends on who's in office, of course. But the government doesn't look at it from both sides, and we need government to look at it from both sides. Because sure, we want cleaner energy, but you just can't stop what we got to go to cleaner energy. That's not feasible. Almost everybody in the United States drives in a gasoline-powered car. So, that doesn't make any sense. You got to make electric vehicles more affordable, because right now they're not. They're not affordable at all. You have to have the infrastructure in place, especially here in the South. You have to have infrastructure in place so that you can take long trips in an electric vehicle. So that where there are gas stations, there are electrical power stations at the same time. That just makes sense to me. Every gas station you build a couple of electric charging stations. It's just that simple. And then that means there's infrastructure there. You install electric charging stations in existing gasoline station infrastructure. So you don't have to create anything new. You just build, depending on how much room you have, the more charging stations you can have. But you put them in gas stations because they're everywhere, and you just make it convenient for people who have electric cars. They can take their electric cars, and you can drive across the United States and not have to worry about it. We're nowhere near that yet. Not even close. Okay? So, it's, oil and gas, and, there's a better way. There's obviously a better way. There's a better way. There's a better way. I watched something on YouTube, there's technology out there that's being held that would radically change the world as we know it. But they're not allowing it to be released. There's technology out that's been invented that will get rid of gasoline and all this stuff forever. And it's free. It would be free energy. But the system is holding on to it. They don't want it out there. Why? Because there's too much money in gas and oil. And that's a shame, because the people are suffering because the few are withholding technology because the lobbies are making too much money. It's all about the money in the end. The environment is not what it should be because of money. There's no money in it. And then if there is, then it's not affordable. Hence the reason why Teslas are so expensive and other electric vehicles are more expensive on average than the average gasoline car. And I'm not talking about luxury cars or anything like that. I'm just talking about the average gasoline car. So, it's a technology that needs to improve. It needs to get better. And I would love an electric vehicle. Can't afford one, but I'd love one. I'd love one. I'd love a Tesla. I'd be happy as a clam with a Tesla. I'd love it. But I can only drive it locally. I could drive it to work, drive it to church. That's it. I can't take it on long trips. They're the infrastructure isn't there. So when it comes to the environment, we have to do better. We can do a lot better. But the problem is that the system is holding technology that could radically change our world. And all governments are involved in this. We should be way further along technologically than we are. The gasoline engine has been around for more than a century. You mean to tell me we haven't invented anything better yet? We have. Ain't no way. Humans are just way too smart. But, it's just the way it is. So let's be more conscious about, our environment. I'm not a radical when it comes to climate on either side. I just believe in an approach to where I understand both sides, and like common sense, you have to come to a consensus, to a compromise. In the end, we want to see people benefit, and in the end, we have to put aside our political differences and come together for the betterment of people. And having a pristine environment is beneficial for everybody, or as pristine as possible. Saving animal species benefits everybody. Saving trees benefits everybody. Saving our natural wetlands benefits everybody. Everybody benefits from it. But nobody can meet in the middle. There's radicals on both sides, and nobody can meet in the middle and actually have some common sense legislation and laws that would not only be beneficial to people, be beneficial to both sides, but most of all be beneficial to the environment. It just seems like a no-brainer to me. But what do I know? So that's what I just figured I'd talk about today. We'll talk about the environment and and how we impact it. Of course we impact the environment. And I'm not one of those that was blaming the cows. That's stupid. The cows are just natural animals like we are. That's stupid and ridiculous. That's dumb. What's hurting the environment is man-made things, not cows. That's stupid and ridiculous. It's man-made things that's hurting the environment. Okay? So let me just mention that right now. I get tired of the folk blaming cows. That's so stupid. Idiots. So, but they blame the cows, but they don't talk about the cars they drive, the planes they fly, the chemicals they use for their hair, or the sprays they use for this, that, and the other. They can care less about that. They want somebody to blame. So, most of these folk that talk about a lot of this stuff are hypocrites. They're hypocrites. They're all hypocrites. So, you really can't pay most of them folk any mind. So anyways, so that's it. I figured I'd talk about it, kind of end the week on something like that. And hopefully Monday we'll get right back onto it, and hopefully have to talk about something else, and hopefully you get something out of it. Every vlog or podcast that I post, I hope you get something out of it. Something. So like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, leave a comment below, and go check out my son's website, philmartin.org, PhillMartin.org. Martin, MARTIN.org. Go check him out. He's doing great, wonderful things on that website. I'm telling you, he is. He's been recognized by Dave Ramsey for the stuff that he said. So he's making moves. So go support my youngest son in his endeavor and what he does. So until next time, we'll talk to you later. God bless you.